the 11th chapter of the Gospel of St. Matthew. And we're just going to lift verses 2 and 3 and jump down to verse 11. Matthew, the 11th chapter, verses 2 and 3. And then we'll finish up just with verse 11. And it reads in the King James, "Now when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples. And he said unto him, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another?" Jump down to verse 11. "Verily I say unto you, amongst them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding that he is the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." The word of the Lord is blessed. You may take your seats. Amen, amen. This morning, we honor the Lord for all that he has done. He brought us back. I honor the Lord for bringing my family back safely from North Carolina last weekend. I had a chance to see my family, our family reunion, our fellowship down in Southern Pines, North Carolina, right near Laurinburg, North Carolina. Yes, we were. And you know what's right next to Laurinburg, North Carolina? Nothing. There's no thing. And North Carolina people, how many North Carolinians attractive people? No North Carolinians? Besides me? Oh, Trey is actually not here. Anyways, North Carolina people have a different sense of distance. When they say something's close, when you say close to me, I think I can see it from here. 5 minutes. No. It's close. North Carolina close is like 2 hours. They said Myrtle Beach was close. It took like 2.5 hours. Like, this ain't close. If I can fall asleep and wake up, it ain't close. Oh, it's right down the road. So praise God, he brought us back up the road. Praise God. But I had a chance to see my family, and many of you know, I come from a long line of preachers and so forth, and so we had a beautiful fellowship. We've been going around the country, and I praise God that next year they're coming here. Praise the Lord. Next Memorial Day, the Vineyard Fellowship is coming to Clinton, Maryland, and so details will be forthcoming. Also, I don't see her, but I wanted to honor the Lord for Sister Deja Powell. We had a chance to honor her yesterday. She graduated the week before, I think. But we certainly give honor to her and join in congratulations with she and her family, because the blood still works. She graduated from Bowie because the blood still works. Because y'all remember, she sat right here and said, "I don't know if I can do it." She was praying to pass the final. She stood right there. And God gave her an A on the final and a diploma. She said, because the blood still works. I don't know a lot. I'm not a smart man, Jenny, like Forrest said. But I know that the blood still works. So today, I'm here. God has given me a task of dealing with one of the great misconceptions of Christianity. One of the great misconceptions. And to put to rest, hopefully, one of the misunderstood things that Christians have stumbled over for years, okay? And that is, we are taught, don't question God.
Isn't that something?
Don't question God. When God does something, we don't question it. Yes to his will, we don't question it. Right? Amen. And I thought that, I looked at that thing, and God took me to the Hebrew of the word question. And there's a word she'elah, right, which means to seek information. And there is she'elot, which means to doubt the veracity of. Right? God don't mind she'elah. He don't tolerate she'elot. Now the problem is, we only got one word for both of those. So when the saints were saying don't she'elot, they're correct. But many of us have confused and said that means we can't she'elah either. But I'm here to tell you the answer O. That's the name of this one here, the answer O. Those of you in schools, you all know that they have what they call selected responses. or what we call a multiple choice, but the fancy name is selective response. And when you design a selective response assessment, you're supposed to have one question that is ridiculous, that can't be possible. Then you have one question that sort of seems like the right answer, then you got the right answer. Right? And one of the easiest ways to spot the ridiculous one, allegedly, is to give it a different letter. So if you have A, B, C, O, most people will assume O cannot be the right answer because it does not follow the right sequence. And so today I want to talk about the answer to O. Right? Because a whole lot of us are dealing with questions that don't seem to be in the right sequence. So I need you to understand about She'elah, the seeking of information. Think about it. If God is big enough to hang the stars in the sky, without no question. If God is big enough to call Lazarus from death, with no question, then God is certainly big enough to answer your question. God is not intimidated by the fact that you need more information. That is man that is intimidated, right? That's your boss that's intimidated. That's your teacher that's intimidated. God is not intimidated by your search for more information. As a matter of fact, in James, the book of James, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God. He that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Now, you keep going. I told you, he don't mind She'elah, but he don't tolerate She'elah. See, because that same text, if you go down to verse 6 in James 1, it says, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. So you know how, parents, you know how your kids can ask you questions. Sometimes they want to know and sometimes they're just being smart.
Yes.
It's a difference between, are we there yet? And are we there yet? It's a difference in the tone, and it's a difference in the attitude. Well, God can already see your attitude. He knows before you open your mouth whether it is She'elah or She'elot. Right? And so, in answer to O, we got to first look at She'elah. He who asks, and this is an old Chinese proverb, y'all. He who asks a question remains a fool for 5 minutes. He who does not ask remains a fool forever. Right. Think about it now. And so we have to understand that God, talked about it last week, God is a God of process. Right? And in order to go through processes, we have to go through transitions. And as we transition, we have questions. When we change, Sister Nicole, I'm sure right now, as she goes through the transitions of having a child, changes are coming, and there could be some questions. Right? Even mothers who had many children call the doctor. Say, doctor, this is an unusual thing, and that's another thing, and this is unfamiliar to me. Right? And so it is important that we don't become so familiar that we feel like we don't have to ask questions. Because God takes us through transitions. Now, transitions don't look like work. Most of the time, transitions look like waiting. Waiting is hard to do. Bible study, we talked about that a little bit. Waiting on God is one of the hardest things for us to do because our minds can't bring closure to things. That's right. When our minds don't have closure, we try to make up our own answers. Right. If we can't find answers, then we get right. The reason that we scared when we will go to the scary movie is because we don't know when it's going to happen. Right. We went to Jaws and we knew it was a shark. We saw the commercial before we went to the movie. We knew it was a shark in there somewhere. Right? Did the water, they go near the water. You know sharks live in the water. So you know at some point the shark got to come. Why do we still get scared and jump when the shark comes? We knew you paid $7 for the shark to cut. Well, 7 is it 50? Oh, that's how old I am. I said $7. I said $7. Show you the last time I've been blessed at $7. I said, where are you going for $7? Man, we should go to the movies for $7. Amen. But anyway, transitions, as I said, look like waiting, and it's the waiting that causes us to question. But we have to make sure in our times of transition that it is she'elah and not she'elot. Philippians 4:6 teaches us to be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. The motive that we have for asking. Now, Christians, we ask God questions and we think that we are slick. We somehow think that God cannot tell the difference in where we're coming from. Like our children, we think that they act like we wasn't 12.
Right.
That we don't know the difference. Now my wife she's not here, but she has the most keen ear for attitudes.
Right.
She can tell the difference between stomping upstairs and walking upstairs.
Right.
She can tell when the door is slammed versus closed very. I can't. But the Lord gave me her because she can. Now God has the same sense of where you're going. Now, I looked at Got Questions, which is a Christian website. And in 2019, the top 5 questions, the most commonly asked questions. Now I want you to think I'm going to do them in descending order. The top 5 questions that are being asked. And you ask yourself, is it she'elah or she'elot? These are quick Christians asking now. I'm going to be ginger about one of them. The 5th most asked question is it all right to physically pleasure yourself? Question 4 says, is the doctrine of once saved, always saved, eternal security, is that biblical? Number 3, what about tattoos? What does the Bible say about tattoos? Number 2, what does the Bible say about homosexuality? Is it a sin? Number 2 question. Number 1, what does the Bible say about women preaching? The number 1 question. She'elot or she'elah? I'm not asking you to answer. I just want you to think about these things. Because what I want you to notice is that 4 out of 5 of those things ain't got nothing to do with God.
All right now. All right.
The 5 questions that they're asking, 4 of them is about man. And what should man do? And what should man wear? And who should stand in front of man? Only one of them asked, God, what do you think? Only one. And these are the top 5 questions. Now, so when we change our attitude towards the questions that we ask, we will find that God's response is different. We will see Him and what He really wants for you in His response. There's a poem called Questions, and it said, I asked God to take away my pain. God said, no, it's not for me to take away. It's for you to give it up. So I asked God to make my handicapped child whole. God said, no, her spirit was whole. Her body was only temporary. I asked God to grant me patience. God said, no. Patience is a byproduct of tribulations. It isn't granted, it is earned.
You got to believe that. Say that.
I asked God to give me happiness. God said, no, I give you blessings. Happiness is up to you.
Right, that's it.
I asked God to spare me of pain. God said, no, because suffering draws you apart from the world and brings you closer to me. I asked God to make my spirit grow. God said, no, you must grow your own, but I will prune it and make it fruitful. I asked God for all things that I might enjoy life. And God said, no, I will give you life so that you can enjoy all things. And so I asked God to help me love others as much as he loves me. And God said, you're finally getting it. I said, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. But in the questioning, why God deals with us in the transition, the fermenting. I've been reading Bishop Jake's book on crushed, on wine making. It talks about the process after you are crushed. You got it, right? After you are crushed, then there's a period of fermenting. And all fermenting is leaving the crushed grapes in the, not a bowl, what's it called? The vat. Leave them sit in there for a long time. Now, why do we leave them in there for a long time? God says after you've been through what you've been through, you have to go through a transition period of fermenting. See? Because after you've been crushed, then any fruit that is crushed, the juice comes out. Now the sugar is exposed. The sweet part of it is exposed to the elements. And the air begins to interact. And the skin of the fruit turns, with the air, turns the sugar into alcohol. So when the sweet inner part of you touches the very nature of you, if it touches too long, it will turn from sweetness to alcohol. Okay. Now God in the book, he says, be careful not to let it sit too long. Because in this process, it is releasing carbon dioxide. Anytime there's a chemical reaction, carbon dioxide is released, right? When you breathe, you release carbon dioxide. And so in this wine pressing process, this fermentation process, what has happened is as the sugar is interacting with the skin, carbon dioxide is being released. If you put it in a jar and don't let the carbon dioxide out, you will spoil the wine. God is saying many of us are trying to hold on to things that we have to let go. It's part of the process. We're questioning why I have to turn things loose, but God is saying it's part of the process. Because guess what happens if you don't let the carbon dioxide go? The wine turns to vinegar. Think about that. What was supposed to be sweet and tasty has now become bitter. Because you would not let go what needed to be let go of, now you have become bitter. And all that happens in the transition while I'm sitting there waiting. God, all while I'm sitting there asking the question, Shelah, God is doing all these things. You don't feel it. You don't feel it, but he's moving and changing things inside. He's answering out. So I'll give you another example. There was a diver named David Boudia. Any of you all big high dive fans? No, because we're brown people. Anyway, y'all laughing, but y'all don't tell the truth. There's a diver named David Boudia, who's a Christian, a very outspoken believer. And David Boudia won a gold medal in the 2012 Olympics back in London, right? And he gives God all the glory. He gave God the glory at that time, and all those kinds of things. And they asked him on TV, and they asked him about his experience, his conversion experience, and he explained to them that he was raised in a house with an atheist, and his whole life he had been taught to question God and the very existence of God, and to deny the very existence of God. But when he went to Purdue University on a diving scholarship, the Lord had arranged it so that his roommate was a believer. And his roommate, his college roommate, began to share with him. He said he never preached at me, he just told me stuff in passing. And so he's going through the struggles that life gives all of us, right? And all he has is little tidbits of what his roommate has placed. Little crumbs, because one plants, one waters. Right? His roommate was not a preacher. His roommate was a sophomore. Right? His roommate was a kid just like him. But he was a kid who had something planted on the inside of him. And he shared that which was planted on the inside of him. And you never know where the seeds are going to sprinkle. Right? He said they never had one long conversation about it. Just in bits and pieces. So he says that one day he was going to practice diving at nighttime. They would often have access to the pool. The pool was closed. Said it was dark in the diving room, right? But he knew the way. He said there was a light, a skylight that shined on the wall so you could see the stairs to climb up. Plus the moonlight came through the window so you could see the stairs to climb up. So he climbed up the stairs to practice his diving, and he goes to the edge of the platform, and he turns to do a reverse. And he puts his arms like this, and he's about to jump, and as he looks on the wall, he sees that his body is casting the reflection of the cross. Wow. And at that moment, all the things his roommate had said to him came back to him. Came crashing back to him. And he never died. He stepped forward and he fell to his knees, and he began to ask God questions. And God began to answer his questions and to deal with him and to turn his life around. And he accepted the Lord in his heart at that moment on that platform. My God. And all the things his roommate had said were answering the questions that he was asking God. And the roommates were coming back to this boy, not at a church, not at a convention, on a platform. All by himself in the dark. So he said he was crying, tears in his eyes as God began to deal with him, and the Lord came into his heart, and he was startled as the lights came on in the pool area. The maintenance man had come and turned the lights on. And y'all thought it was God, it was the maintenance man. But God was in there, because when he looked down, he realized that the pool had been drained. You see, if he would have just dove in the dark, he'd have been killed. But God had stopped him before he could destroy himself. See, God had given him warning signs with the roommates. But God himself had to come in on that platform and save him from himself. And spend time in question and change his life. Change his perception. How many of us have had a David Budia experience? That when it really happened, I was on my way to destruction. The reality was that night, the devil had intended to destroy him. That was supposed to be the last night I had on earth. But in order to save me, God had to show me the cross. He had to show me that I have already taken the keys to death. And that you don't have to jump. I don't know who I'm talking to this morning. God's saying you don't have to jump. You're struggling with something because you won't ask me the question. But wherever you are, right there on your platform, God's saying it's okay to ask me the question. I'm not intimidated by you asking me the question. I don't think you don't love me because you don't know. I don't think you're irreverent, or I don't think you're disrespectful because you don't know. Because I know in your heart is she'elah and not she'elot. God said, my people perish because they don't have knowledge, and they don't have knowledge because they won't ask.
Jesus.
Why? Because Deacon Johnson said, don't ask.
Right.
Don't question God. So we keep going here. Go back to the text. Go back to the text. To Matthew, the 11th chapter. I'm talking about a man named John. And John, it says, I was starting at first verse. It came to pass when Jesus had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, that he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. So what happened, Jesus was in Galilee for the 4th time, and he was sending his disciples out in front of him. He said, when you go out there, get them ready for me to come. Tell them that my message is coming. Now the difference between the disciples and the others is that he gave them miracle working power. Those prophets of old who came before him, they did not have miracle working power to demonstrate the coming of the Messiah. But he said to you guys, I want you to come and go bling, so now they'll know I'm coming behind you. So he imbued them or endowed them with power from on high. Right? And he said, go in there and tell them that I'm coming. And then he came behind them. So all over Judea, you have the disciples coming, and they're speaking about the coming of the Lord, the coming of the Messiah, and they're performing miracles. And verse 2 says, now when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent his 2 disciples. Now, you got to remember, John was in jail on a humble. He was in jail because he offended the king. He hadn't broken no laws. All he did was he made somebody mad. And because he stood fast and said, you shouldn't be married to your brother's wife. Y'all shouldn't be carrying it like that. And because the man was offended, he threw John in jail. And so he sends this John who's in jail. You got to think, I've been preaching all this time. John the Baptist has been out in the wilderness all this time. Right? Look like to me, God, that you would come and rescue me after all that I've done for you. I preach your name for nothing, for free. Look like you would rescue me. I've laid hands on the sick. It looked like you would rescue me. God, don't you owe me something? That's our human mind operating. But it doesn't say that John did that. It says that John sent 2 disciples. And the disciples were tasked. In verse 3, he said, say unto Jesus when you get there, art thou he that should come? Or do we look for another? Are you the one? Or should we look? Now I need you to look at the contrast. What a little tribulation can do. Little trial can do. See, John, in Matthew 3, that's the same John when Jesus said, I need you to baptize me. John said, I'm not worthy to baptize you. You need to baptize me, for thou art the Messiah. The Son of the living, right? This is the same John who said all that. But now by chapter 11, he's saying, art thou? You knew who I was at first. But then tests and trials make you start to question. Right? Now, is that She'elah or She'elot? Now we are loting. Now that's some She'elot right there. Right? And so, Jesus, I don't know. There's one thought that says that was the case. Then there was one thought that said that John was strong in faith. And that all he was trying to do was confirm what he already knew. Right? That the real testimony was for the 2 disciples. Go there and hear what he says. Y'all can take it whichever way you want. But that, that's just the 2 schools of thought. But I like to look at what Jesus said. The answer to the question. See, the answer, Jesus answered and said unto them, go and show John again. Go show him again. That means he has already seen it. That means he already has the answer to the question. But go show him again the things that you see, or hear, pardon me, and see. Tell them that the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, and the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Brother DeVoe and I were just talking about this morning. My God. See, these are the divine credentials. When you stand before the Lord, you don't have any title. You don't have no resume written on good paper.
No, you do not.
Huh? You can't say you went over Harvard. You don't care. Harvard, you don't care. Your resume are the things that you have done. And so Jesus refers John back to his divine resume. What have you done? What is your work experience? Because we can all get a degree or something. We can fake one and write it up. I can bring a certificate in from, make it look pretty from Staples. And I can bring it in there. And if you don't check behind me, I can tell you anything. But at some point, I'm going to have to demonstrate my ability to perform the task. So Jesus cuts right to the chase. He says, tell John to look at my divine resume. To tell John the same things that are happening today. He said, tell them that the blind see. That people who didn't, just like Brother Budia on that platform, when he was blind to the knowledge of God, tell them I'm still opening blind eyes before they get destroyed. Tell them right here that the lame, people who are hurt through no fault of their own, people who've been hurt for a long time, people who've gotten used to moving with pain. Said, tell them that the lame are healed at the pool of Bethesda. Praise the Lord.
My God.
He said, tell the lepers. Now, lepers, that represents being cast away. Right? Because you know all the rules and the laws of leprosy, but that you could not be around people and you could not, right? So to be a leper was to be separated from all the things you loved and separated from society. And there's people who still feel separated. My brothers behind locked prison walls feel separated. My brothers and sisters struggling in AIDS wards feel separated. My homeless, all kinds of groups we can point to that are marginalized. But how many of you know that they're still being restored and reunited? Because Jesus said, tell them that the lame are healed at my name, my God. And then he said, tell them that the dead are being raised up. The dead are being resurrected. Dead situations are being restored. When they tell you you're not going to be nothing, you're right. They're right, because you're going to be something.
Right. That's right.
So when they try to tell you that that situation is dead, you're right. But God's going to resurrect it.
Amen.
Tell them the same God, because the blood still works.
That's right.
Right? Okay. Now, Brother Devolian was just speaking about this morning. Look like to me that everybody has gotten their situation resolved. If I'm blind, they gave me sight. If I'm lame, they gave me healing. Right? Why is it that it said that the poor have the gospel preached to them? Look like if I'm a little strange, I need some change. That's what I need. What you talking about the gospel preached to me? I need a couple dollars. That's why I don't have no money. Praise God. Why would the Lord say, why would he say, tell them that the poor have the gospel preached? Are you trying to tell me, Jesus, that the gospel is worth more than currency?
Absolutely.
Are you trying to tell me that if you give me the gospel, I can get money?
Wow.
Money is not an end.
That's it.
Right.
Money is a means to an end.
Right.
That's why the Bible says, it doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is only as valuable as we place it. That's why you will go, when you go to other countries and things like that, you will come home with different currencies. And if you were still in France, you could buy $100 worth of stuff with that. But when you get home, that piece of paper is just a souvenir. Because they don't show no value to it. But are you saying to me, Jesus, that those people who don't have resources, what they need to have is their mind change?
That's right.
The reason that we're poor is because we're thinking poor.
Right.
The reason that we're poor is because we have not accessed the God of all things. We have not tapped into the source, so we're worried about resources. And that's why, so Jesus said, yeah, Brian, that's what I'm telling you. Don't give them no money, give them the plan. That's why he says the solution to poverty is the gospel of Jesus Christ.
My God. Yes.
So when we go down, and we down talking about this, when we go down to the homeless park, to the park, and to feed the brothers and sisters, it is wonderful that we have Mama's real good soup that we make. But don't forget to give them the gospel.
That's right.
We came down there to tell them about Jesus. It's cold outside, and I want you to have these hats and gloves, but I came down here to make sure that you know about Jesus.
Amen.
Because he said that the poor, tell them part of the resume is that the poor have the gospel preached to them. I feel that. So he goes down there. Verse 6, he says, blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. That word blessed is barak. He said barak, meaning well thought of, or barak, meaning struck by divine power. He said, blessed is he who is not offended. That word is scandalizo, scandalized. But blessed is he who's not scandalized by me. And so he commanded his disciples to do the last O's. The first O was opportunity. He said, take your opportunity. Whenever you get it, take the opportunity to preach the gospel. And preach it to the ecclesia, to anyone who will hear it, the omenos. Right. So the first O, opportunity, that's the when. The second O, to the omenos, that's to the who. Where? Over all the world. The last O's, what Jesus tells them, real simple. The same charge he's giving me, same charge he's giving you, is the same charge he gave them. Dio or Geo. Let's all get you started. Either you go Dio or you got the Geo. He's telling his disciples, right, you cannot be my disciple and stand still. You cannot be my disciple only in the walls of this church. Right? It's not just enough to Dio. We have to Geo. Right? We have to make sure that the message gets out to the whole world, because by the time you get to verse 7, he says, now Jesus starts talking about John the Baptist. And he says, and they departed. Jesus began to say to the multitudes concerning John, what did y'all go out to the wilderness to see? Did you come out to see a reed shaking in the wind? Now, in those days, those reeds, those Persian reeds was real tall, like 20-foot reeds, but they was real skinny. And then whichever way the wind blew, the reed would lean that way. So he said, what were you expecting? Some preacher was going to come out and lean whichever way the wind blew. You okay? Is that what you're waiting for? Somebody's going to say it's okay for homosexuality? Question 2. Well, why is that even on the list? Because Jesus said, show them again what they ought to do. Half these questions, y'all know the answers. The Bible has the answer right there. You just want somebody to say something different. You want them to blow another way. What were you expecting? A reed to blow in the wind? He said, John wasn't like that. John's going to stay. Amen. Amen. Steadfast. He said, when you come out to see somebody wearing fly clothes, soft raiment, somebody to look the part, the devil got some bad suits. He does. Custom made, skinny, the little European cuts. The devil can dress up whatever way you think God was supposed to look.
Isn't that something?
That's why he said, what was you expecting? 3-piece suit? French cut? What was your double breast? The only way to like that no more, but still, I like it. What was that? What was your pinstripes? What was you expecting? That John the Baptist wore animal skins. He wasn't like that. He said, but what went ye out to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, more than a prophet. For this, he of whom it is written, behold, I send a messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. That's Malachi 3:1. One thing about my Lord and Savior, he was the word, but he sure knew the word. He came out right always from the Old Testament. So he quoted, he said, this is the same guy from Malachi 3:1. That's what you came out to see. But last piece, jump down, verse 11. It confused me, and I'm going to get out your way after the confusion. He says, verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Now, it sounded like Jesus was giving him some dab, but he took his dab back. Said, of all the men who are born of a woman, there's not one greater than John the Baptist. So I thought Jesus, of course, him being divine, he's only talking about only me, I'm better than him. But he said, no. He said, for the king, who the least in the kingdom is greater than John the Baptist. I said, God, why would you say the least in the kingdom would be greater than John for all that he had done? And it's very simple. God said, because those in the kingdom have seen the cross. John never got to see the cross.
Wow.
So he can talk, if you don't see the cross, as the boy did on the platform, then you can talk about Jesus. But until you see the cross, you don't know Jesus. You don't know the love of Christ. You see the power of Christ. You might know the words of Christ. But until you see the cross and what Jesus did dying for you, you don't understand the love of God. And so he said, anybody who knows the love of God, anybody who can say for sure enough that the blood still works. You get it? I told you y'all was in front of me. You know that the blood still, I know it works because it healed me. I know it works because it filled me, and I'm convinced that it shall never lose its power. Anybody who can look at that cross and know that, you are greater even than John the Baptist. Because you know the love of God. So when you ask a question out of love, he don't mind that. So be sure when you talk to the newborns in Christ that we get it right. God don't mind a little she'elah. Right. But he won't tolerate she'elah. The answer is that, oh, where's the oh? Where was your opportunity that you had? Who are you going? Are you going to DL? Or are you going to GL? Amen. I'm going to stop right there because I keep going. But I'm going to stop right there. Amen. Praise the Lord. I wanted to pray real quickly for anybody who's ever had questions. You feel guilt over questions. Y'all stand to your feet. Stand to your feet.